Hey guys, what's up? I'm back from my travels, so it's time to post another video. Here in this episode, I will be finishing up the Invert coaster, Patriot. I did find a lot of new details to put in, such as extra bits of catwalk areas with kind of support beams for the catwalks. And also, I built the station in this episode, which turns out really cool. I also kind of discover this little idea, which I have noticed on a lot of B&M coasters. They have a much thicker spine on the track, on the brake runs and that kind of thing. So I basically tried to incorporate that into this coaster by using some wooden pieces, coloured them the same as the track, and just kind of trying to sink them into the track there, just to kind of give it that extra bit of detail there on the brake run. So as I just said, I am back from my travels, where I did manage to go to Cedar Point. It was everything I wished it was and more. It was so good, and if you haven't been there, try and get there. It's just, I've dreamt about going there for maybe 20 years, and I'm so glad I finally went. I actually thought that Millennium Force, the Parks Giga Coaster, was going to be my favourite ride, and it wasn't. I mean, it was great, but Maverick for me was the one. Maverick was crazy. It had everything I love in a roller coaster and more. So I love lift hills and a drop, and it had that. I love launches, it had that. I love inversions. It had the speed, the change of direction. Like, the second half of the ride is crazy, and the airtime is just so crazy. Injector, it has it all, and that was the one for me. Other rides I really enjoyed were obviously Top Fuel Dragster. I have ridden King Dakar, and that was one of my favourite roller coasters. And Dragster was just a little bit better, mainly because of the lap bars. It has a lot of downtime, so it wasn't really open most of the time. I did manage to ride it 2.5 times. The third time, we had an emergency evac stop on the launch. So I made it about half the way down the launch. I came to a dead stop, rolled backwards to the station, and had to get off. I was a bit disappointed, but at least I'd rode it twice already. Everyone was like, "Oh my god, did you guys get a rollback?" And I was like, "No, we just stopped." So that was an experience. Other rides in the park I enjoyed actually were Magnum, which was a surprise to me. I thought it was going to be terrible, like bumpy old rough arrow coaster, and actually it was so good. I think a little part of it for me was the history of the ride. It definitely had that in my head as I was riding it, as it did start the coaster wars, and it was the first roller coaster over 200 feet. But it was actually really good. The drop was good, it was forceful. The second hill was bumpy, but you know, it was fine, it's arrow. And then just had like this crazy airtime on the way back to the station. It kind of felt like the ride was designed, and then they realized that it had airtime and that it was a complete mistake. So it was like accidental airtime, but it was just so crazy, and I did love that ride, and it was a ride I returned to over and over in the park, mainly because it never had more than a 5-minute wait. So that was one good one. Another one for me was Gemini. I thought that was going to be absolutely terrible, like a one ride only kind of ride, get the credit and never do it again. But it was awesome. It was smooth, the drops were great, had great head choppers, like the trains were really close together on the turn, so you could high-five the other train as you were racing. So yeah, Gemini was really cool, and that was another ride I also returned to a lot, and only had less than a 5-minute wait, so that was cool. Rides, I was kind of disappointed with our Raven. It was great, it was huge, massive dive coaster by B&M, crazy smooth. But the restraints, they used those new vest restraints, and they were so tight on my chest and on my thighs that I didn't feel free enough. Like, I rode Shikra, and Shikra has like the old restraints, and it's definitely, I felt a bit more like free in my seat, and I enjoyed it way more. Still a good coaster though, not a bad ride, just a bit disappointed with the restraints. Same restraints on Gatekeeper, but it doesn't really make a difference on Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper was cool. I'm not a big fan of wing coasters. But it was good, and Raptor as well, and an Invert, which I actually used a bit of inspiration for Raptor for this ride, especially with the station and the brake run and the transfer area. But Raptor, it was crazy wild. It was so out of control, but in control. Like, I thought the train was going to split in two or something. Like, it was crazy. The speed it takes the inversions is just on another level compared to the other inverts I've ridden. Like, Montu is one of my favourite inverts, but it feels a lot more controlled. Nemesis as well. I've ridden Silver Bullet and some Batman clones. And for me, like, Raptor was the craziest invert I've ever ridden. But great. I returned to that maybe 3 times. Did that 3 times. It was good. If you have any more questions about like my holiday, my trip, or anything to do with that, how to get there, or what the rides were like, drop me a comment down below, and I'm free to answer anything. I have actually thought maybe about making some videos about my trips. I don't vlog or anything, but I take a lot of photographs, and like maybe I could do like a top 10 roller coaster video or something of my favorite rides, or my top 10 theme parks or something like that. If you're interested in that kind of thing, let me know down below. Maybe I think about making a video. Might be quite cool to have some different things going on my channel. So back to my park here. Just as you can see, I'm making the station. I did try and make some bins inside the station to put your personal items in when you ride the ride. So that was a nice little detail to add in. Sometimes the rides have lockers, which I've done for some rides, and sometimes they don't have lockers and they just have station bins. So I'm kind of using a mixture of all the kind of things. The station was trial and error, as I always say. I do go on to do the queue line for this and just add some details around the front. Some of it does, as the park develops, some of the stuff does change, and I realise that I don't actually want that there, so I move it or I change it a little bit. So not everything you see is final, I will say, but the majority of what I make is final. I also add a fast pass queue, which you can see here. This is just like an extra entrance for people with fast pass tickets. So I'm going to leave you now to watch the rest of it. As soon as I finish this roller coaster, I do start another one, which you won't see in this episode, but tune in next time where you'll see me start a brand new coaster. And just a little hint, the park is getting some wood, so tune in for that. Enjoy the rest of this episode. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time.